amongst the science community throughout the world. Other scientists start looking at it and they say, you know what? It either fits into the category of apes or it fits into the category of humans. Like Lucy fit into the category of apes, probably a chimpanzee. Neanderthal man fits in the category of humans. To this day, there is still no in-between. And in fact, Richard Milton, again, who says, I don't believe in creation, I don't believe in the Bible, he said all the fossils that we have found today, and his book was written in the mid-1990s, so it was pretty new. He says all the fossils we found today have either been classified as ape or human. Nothing in between. And so the evidence is tainted. Hulse is an anthropologist. He wrote a college textbook on anthropology. And Hull says that these pictures that we see of ape-men, half ape, half human, he says these pictures we see are simply reconstructions of the imagination of the artist. Now you think about that and let that sink in. When we see these pictures of these ape-men, the pictures we see are simply reconstructions from the artist's imagination. It's not what they dig up. Notice scientists find this portion of the skull, for example. And then they start imagining what the rest of him looked like. And all of this is simply imagination. And then when it gets to a point that they want it to be at, then they put hair on him, make his eyebrows real heavy, make his forehead a little bigger, so that he looks more like an ape and less like a human. But it's all from the fertile imagination of the evolutionists. One more example in that regard. Here's what they found in the 1930s of what they named Ramapithecus, the scientific name for it. And here's what they drew. Now how did you get that from that? It's all in the imagination of people who believe evolution to begin with. So there's no reason why you and I, there's no reason why we need to allow our children to believe that evolution is true. The evidence simply is not there. Well, let's change gears just a moment. If evolution is not true, if all human beings came from Adam and Eve, then where do we get all of these different races that we have in the world today? From very pale to very black, and all different shades in between. Well, let me explain to you real quickly how that can happen. We understand that our traits are passed down through genetics. And there's maybe as many as 6 genes that control our skin color. I'm going to simplify it and just give you an example from one gene. Let's say Adam had a strong gene, symbolized by the big A, capital letter A. He had a strong gene for white skin color. And he carried a weaker gene for black skin color, symbolized by the lowercase a. And let's say that Eve was the same way. Now that is very basic genetics. Adam had a strong gene for white and a weak gene for black skin color. Eve had a strong gene for white color and a weak gene for black color. Now they're going to pass one of those genes on to their offspring, to their children. Now, geneticists used to use this Punnett square. They don't use it as much anymore. But using this Punnett square, we can see how Adam and Eve would pass one gene on to Cain, and another gene, or gene on to Abel, another gene to Seth, and all the other children that they had. Capital letter A symbolizes white skin color. Little letter a symbolizes black skin color. You can see where Adam and Eve could have had a black baby. Little a symbolizes 2 weaker genes, which means the black skin color shows up, and Adam and Eve could have had a black baby. Just the second generation in God's creation. So it is not at all impossible for us to have the differences in human beings today from Adam and Eve. So that question should never cause us a problem. Well, let's take a step back. I was talking with, there it is on the screen. Little a means you have black skin color. I was talking with Jewel yesterday about Noah's flood and the evidence in the world about the flood, the worldwide flood of Noah. And I pointed out to her, same thing I point out to you. The number one reason why I believe in a worldwide flood, number one reason why I believe Adam and Eve were the first man and woman, is because Jesus believed that. And if Jesus believed it, then that's enough for me. And everything else has to be interpreted in the light of what Jesus said. Because Jesus rose from the dead, and Jesus rose from the dead, He's God. And He was there when it all happened. The Bible, of course, teaches that man was made in the image of God. I used to read a lot of books about biology, especially snakes, obviously, but I love biology. And one time I came home, I guess I was in middle school, and I said something to my mom about human being mammals. And Mom, in her godly wisdom, said, no, son, humans are not mammals. But yeah, they are, Mom. You see, parents are ignorant, you know. When you're in middle school, parents are ignorant. And so I said, yes, they are, Mom. Humans are mammals because we nurse our young, we've got hair on our body, we breathe oxygen. She said, yes, we do, son. But we also worship God, we get married, we design computers, we communicate in complex ways. And I've never forgotten that. And to this day, it is one of my pet peeves. Humans are not animals. Humans are not mammals. The differences that separate us from the apes are even greater than the differences that separate fish from reptiles or reptiles from mammals. Brethren and friends, we do worship God. And we do get married. And we can design computers and spaceships and rockets and airplanes. We can do all of those things because we are made in the image of God. As Rob read from Psalms chapter 8, we are made in the image of God, and we are the pinnacle of God's creation. We are not animals. We are made after God. And that makes us special. God said, let us make man, not animals. Let us make man in our image. God didn't even use animals to create man. God scooped up a handful of dirt, and He said, there's Adam. Jesus thought that Adam and Eve were the first human beings. In Matthew chapter 19 and verse 4, Jesus says, God made them from the beginning, male and female. Where did sexual reproduction come from? God designed it. God created it. Where did the ability to communicate in complex ways come from? God designed it. Where did language come from? God created it. Because man is made in the image of God. Jesus talked about Adam being the first man. The Apostle Paul comes along, and Paul calls Adam the first man in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And he calls Eve the first woman in 1 Timothy chapter 2. There were no prehistoric man. There is no prehistoric man because history begins with the book of Genesis, and that's when Adam was created. Moses wrote the book of Genesis in order to tell me and you where we came from. We were created by a special design from God. God said, I'm going to make somebody who will be with me in heaven. So God designed us in a unique way after His image. And so we need to teach these things to our children and our grandchildren so that they will not be influenced by their teachers at school who either don't know the truth or who willfully ignore